Hey TCS TV viewers, it's Dave and Evelyn from the camera store, and today we're going to give you our first impressions of the Canon EOS R6 Mark II.
There are a ton of improvements to this camera, so let's get into it.
The Canon EOS R6 Mark II is an evolution of the EOS R lineup, and it has some significant updates compared to the original R6.
The Canon R6 Mark II is a full-frame camera featuring a brand new 24.2 megapixel sensor and improved processing speed, which gives us really exciting features like up to 40 frames per second in electronic shutter.
We also have in-body image stabilization, some enhanced video features, a few control changes, and just an overall new experience and an upgrade from the Canon EOS R6.
Now this is the original R6 we're holding here because we unfortunately only had a brief time with the R6 Mark II. I didn't want to give it back. I was having a lot of fun with it because I do like the improvements they've done to that camera.
Yeah, now we have to mention that we were shooting with a pre-production sample, and so we're kind of limited in what we were able to do with it and show you, but we want to give you our first impressions of what we think this camera is all about and if we think it's worth it to have the Mark II version.
When you first get your hands on the R6 Mark II, it feels very much like the original R6. And that's a very good thing because it feels good. Canon's always done great ergonomics, I found. Now, as far as the Canon usability goes, if you've been using Canon in the past, one big difference is they've swapped the on-off switch. This is kind of a big deal in the Canon world. Canon's always put their on-off switches out of the way. So if you turn the camera on, you don't have to accidentally worry about knocking it off. What Canon has done now is instead of the on-off switch on the top left-hand side of the camera, they've made that a dedicated photo and video switch. This is pretty cool. We also have a custom 1, 2, and 3 menu system that is separate in photo and in video. So you can customize this camera because it's much more of a hybrid camera. It's kind of cool that way. The other thing I'm really happy that Canon has kept with the R6 Mark II is the same form of weather sealing. I have no trouble at all. Even though we're on a nice bright sunny day here in Calgary, I have no problem at all having snow being thrown at me and using this camera. I'm not worried about it at all. The weather sealing is great on these cameras.
Since Dave was talking about the on-off switch, I want to talk a little bit about power and media. So first off, we have the same battery that's in the original Canon EOS R6. It is the LPE6N battery, and although it's the same battery, we're actually getting better battery life. So during our tests, we found that it was lasting a lot longer than we expected on both the photo and the video side. So that's great to see. We're not sure if it's just the better processing power or it's just more efficient, but of course that's always great to see. Now, when it comes to media, we have two UHS 2 SD memory card slots. So if you're doing something where you want backup or you want to have RAWs on one, JPEGs on the other, it's nice to have the dual slots. And then when it comes to the experience of using this camera, of course, the Canon interface is fantastic. We have the joystick to move your focusing points around. Everything feels really good and as expected. The electronic viewfinder, though, is still 3.69 million dots, so it's the same as the predecessor. I was hoping to see a little bit of a bump. One thing they did that was interesting, though, is from the Canon EOS R3, we have the optical viewfinder simulation. So if you're someone that's used to shooting a DSLR camera and you want to see more of that look of the natural, just light passing through the lens, it gives you that same kind of look. So it doesn't have the exposure preview or all of the different functions on the screen. And so if that's something that you like from your experience with the DSLR camera, you have that option. Now, personally, I could really see that being used for studio photography, but otherwise, I think once you go with exposure preview, it's really hard to think of why you'd want to go back. So it's just a nice little option to have. For the LCD screen, we have the fully articulating screen seen on the predecessor. It's a nice screen. I like that you can use the touch interface to go through the menu system, select autofocus, and tap on your subject for both photo and video. Overall, the handling is great. And so let's get into performance.
All right, Evelyn, the one thing about this camera, it's all about speed. I mean, the performance. I mean, I thought the R6 at 20 frames per second was ludicrous. I thought, who needs 20 frames per second? But the more that I used it, the more I really liked it and enjoyed it. And I found it changed how I shoot.
Yeah, and of course the autofocus, when you pair it with the 40 frames per second, when you're able to actually shoot raw images, 40 frames per second with autofocus, I mean, that's amazing. You're able to catch these fleeting moments, whether you're photographing wildlife or birds or sports. It can really change the way that you're able to capture those types of images, those fleeting moments. We're seeing some improvements with face and eye detection. It's really locking onto the iris of the eye, and so you're not getting like eyelash detection or nose detection or eyeglasses detection. But now we have dedicated profiles for horses.
Yeah.
We have some more vehicle ones, you know, bicycle, planes, trains, automobiles, all that fun stuff.
And you also have our automatic select.
Yes, and we're finding that that works quite well actually. So it does a good job of detecting what kind of subject you're shooting. And of course, when we're photographing the horses, we're finding that it does a good job of tracking it, and the results are looking good as well.
I mean, if 40 frames isn't enough for you, there's also another way of capturing those fleeting moments, and they have raw burst built into this camera. What this means is that it's recording 0.5 seconds before you actually push the shutter button down. The only trouble is we need to open it up in DPP. It's stored as a single file. Now, the nice thing about the autofocus system here, it works very well with video, and that's what we're going to talk about next. All right, we brought Drew on camera. We're going to talk about video in the R6 Mark II and why I'm not wearing a toque. I'm the only one not wearing a camera store branded toque today. So what features have you found cool about the new R6 Mark II?
Breathing correction. It was really nice when Sony first implemented that with their G Master lenses. Canon's following suit.
It's nice that it has it. Now there is a slight crop with that to make that work.
Yep.
Other companies work the exact same way, but once you've seen focus breathing, you can't unsee it.
Yep.
And so it's nice to have that built into it. We also have kind of a cool thing called subject detection AF restriction. And this means that if I'm following somebody across the frame and they walk off the frame, the camera's not going to reacquire focus and hit the background. Be a little bit distracting when it comes to the overall look of the video footage.
I mean, there is a easier way to accommodate for that, and it's called manual focus, but you know.
Now speaking of different tools and stuff, now we have false colors and some other video tools that are specific.
Zebras as well. All of these nice little video tools.
Is that zebras or zebras?
I mean, it would be nice to have all those while you're recording, but you know, you make do with what you can.
I see. Now, does this camera have the ability to shoot raw video?
Yes, it does have raw recording, although no internal raw recording. It's only off of the HDMI. And as with the usual little suspects, we have 4K 60 oversampled from 6K as opposed to 5.4K. We do have 4K 30. We do have Super 35, which has longer record limits. So the usual kind of suspects that we're seeing.
Yeah, now the first thing I questioned was recording limit, and with 4K 30, we have no recording limit.
You also have very little overheating issues from what we've seen. So your favorite hand warmer, unfortunately, you know, you're gonna have to suffer through the cold.
Well, we're not exactly warm today. It's sunny, but it's not exactly warm today, but we're having no issues at all. Any of our testing we've done with this camera.
Branded gloves, that's what we're gonna get you. That's how we're gonna.
Branded heated gloves, if anybody's out there, branded heated gloves, heated vests, heated jackets, I'm for it. And the last thing that's still video related is we definitely have a plug and play video camera for doing live streams with.
Yes, it is a trend that I really, really want every camera company to just pick up and run with. The web plugins were fine initially. It's becoming a lot more prevalent in pretty much every camera to have USB-C for not just power, but this plug and play function. So yeah.
It's a total incorporation of one device to kind of help you out with every part of your lifestyle.
Exactly, true hybrid.
All right, Evelyn, so we had a brief time with the R6 Mark II. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I want it. For one thing, it was really hard to give it back. It's been an enjoyable experience. I think they've made enough refinements to the system that it's worthy of that Mark II designation. There's enough little subtle hardware changes, but then also just improving the processing. I mean, getting better battery life, better autofocus tracking, and being able to have that faster scanning sensor and a little bit more resolution to work with, I think is really going to be a great tool.
Yeah, and when you thought 20 frames a second was ludicrous, 40 frames a second is insane, but it's there if you want to make use of it, and I love having that flexibility in a camera.
I mean, again, if you think of a camera at this price point, being able to shoot at the fast frame rate with great autofocus, I mean, we're talking about pro level specs that we would have seen in cameras a few years ago. And now this isn't something that's kind of like their mid-range full frame mirrorless camera.
Yeah, and then when we start talking about it as a video camera, as a true hybrid camera, it's a fantastic video camera.
And they've made so many hybrid refinements to this camera. And so I think it's a very solid option. And so if you're someone that is choosing a full frame mirrorless camera, I think it's definitely the way to go. If you have an R6 and you were looking at the Mark II as an upgrade, you know, it has enough changes that I think it would be a nice upgrade, but I think the R6 is still a very solid option too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people bought the R6 because of the 20 frames per second. Now, if that's your reasoning, You got double the frame rate now. We can even make it even better, but it's an improved autofocus system, better battery life. And we didn't mention there's the multi-shoe now instead, not just the regular hot shoe.
Yeah.
Now we have a multi-shoe, so if you want to put XLR adapters on there or whatever else, it's the same as the R3.
Yeah, now of course we want to know, what do you guys think? Does this check all your boxes? Is it something that you think is worth the Mark II designation? Let us know by commenting below.
Make sure you follow us both on Instagram.
And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so we can catch you again very soon.
Oh, hello. I got nothing for you. Yeah, it's
Oh, that's so mean! Those poor little birdies.
oh, yeah, when it comes to live streaming, you can check out MySpace.
MySpace. What was it, 2007?
Hey, thanks for sticking around and watching this episode on the Canon R6 Mark II. If you want to check out more of our recent content, click up here. And if you are Canadian and you want to shop local, check out thecamerastore.com down here.